Hi, in this tutorial we're going to talk a little bit about using compositing for creating effects. Now the example that we're going to create is a simple particle effect, which is something like you could do in a game engine, some kind of a simple fire. And we're going to use some compositing techniques to enhance the effects of the fire. So I'm going to show you a few examples over here. So the animation that we see right here is a particle animation with billboards, in which we have like a simple texture that turns around in different kinds of directions and that fades out towards the end. Now you can very clearly see the patterns of all these big chunks of particles. Now we're going to improve this effect by distorting the image that we see over here. Distorting the image with another particle effect and using that within a composition. And this gives us the following effect. So right here we see the flame, and this whole flame is being broken up into different parts. It's being ripped apart because of the distortion that we've created. So let's get started with this. First of all, the thing that we need to do is to create our particle effect. So let's go over here, create a geometry, call it particle flame, like that. Go inside, and inside of this geometry create a particle or a pop network. Okay, we're going to create a very simple one in which we're going to just add a location, so something which is like a simple source. And now let me just make this a little bit smaller so that we see more what's going on the screen. And so if you play this, we see all these particles coming up onto the screen. Now make sure to set the time real time so that you have like a good indication of what the actual speed is. Okay, first of all we want to make sure that those flames are going upward, in an upward motion. Now to do that, flames are rising towards the sky because we have this heated air and they're going up all the time. So for that we're going to use a force. And this force node, we're gonna make it so that it pushes upwards into the y direction. So let's start off with a value of, let's say, 0.5. So each frame is going to add this value as a force on top of those particles. So we get something which is already going upward. Now for location, now we have all these particles going in all kinds of directions, so let's make sure that we make this variance a little bit less, that we are sure that in all they're moving upward. Now the other thing that we might want to do as well is over here that we add some turbulence. So for example we can have over here some more amplitude, and now if you see the particles, you see they start to follow some kind of a pattern. So they're not moving straight up anymore, they're just starting to follow some kind of a pattern. Now the stronger you make this, the stronger you make this, the stronger those particles will try to follow this noise pattern, as you can see. So let's reduce this again and perhaps increase the frequency a little bit. So we have all kinds of patterns again. Hang on, let me just introduce much more frequency. Now we see them going into all kinds of directions. Perhaps this is still a little bit too much. Now we're going to make this frequency again a bit lower. Frequency is in fact the noise pattern, how busy the noise pattern is. So if you lower this perhaps just a little bit. Now the most important thing that I want to change is right now all these particles, they follow a predicted noise pattern. And we're going to change this by animating the seed each frame. So change this into $F. Now each frame, this noise pattern is going to be changed. So the thing that we're going to have now is more the noise that we want to have. But still it's a little bit too hard. Let me just reduce it again. And you just have to play around a little bit until you find the right settings. Oh, this is the amplitude that is still too high, something like this. And as you can see, now we have these varying patterns. Now the other thing that we want to do is to change the amount of particles. Now for a game engine we want to reduce this quite a bit, depending on what game you have or how many of these effects that you have. But imagine that we have like just a very few particles that we can use. So change the birth rate to, let's say, a number of 10, something like that. So this means that we have for each second about 10 particles that are being born. Now the life expectancy, we'll change this as well. So let's see if we put this to 5 seconds. Well, they still all reach the top. Let's make it a little bit smaller, like a life expectancy of 3. And over here they disappear. Okay, now the life variance can also vary with 1 second, so some of them will live longer while others die faster. Alright, but now still we see just little points. Let's change the display settings so that we can see actual sprites. So you do this by pressing on the D button, and then right over here in particles you can change the display into sprites. Okay, so right now we actually see the sprites. Now we're also going to control the size of the particles. So what I want to achieve is that these particles are going to grow in the beginning, and then towards the end are going to shrink again. And for that we're going to create a curve, an animation curve that we're going to read out. So add a sprite, and you're going to see if we use these sprites and we're going to activate the scale, that they're going to have a scale size of 0. Now this is not a problem, you don't see it right over here what exactly the value is. Now we're going to create over here an expression which will change what's inside. So to do that properly, we're going to first create an extra spare parameter. So edit parameter interface, and right over here we're going to take a float. So add it right above the scale. And this one we're going to call the size control. Size control, like that. Apply and accept. Now the thing that we're going to do is we're going to create an animation from 1 to 100, and later on we're going to use this animation inside of the scale. So you're going to create keys, and you do that by pressing Alt left mouse button over here, go to frame 100, press Alt left mouse button right here. Now with the shift you see that we have over here the size control. Now over here you can also press Alt, and you can take over here the keys and change their timing attributes and also their values. So we're going to start off with a particle which is already has a little bit some size, grows and then gets smaller again. So this is something we should have. Now for the rest, I think we can just leave it as it is right now and just close this window again. Now if we are going to take the channel just right away directly, so by typing over here channel size control, we're going to get the following. Hang on. Let's see, this is scale, so this will become channel scale 1. Now I've changed this so that the size in the Y is going to match up exactly with the size in the X. So I can do whatever I want over here. This one is going to follow automatically. So what we're going to see right now is that the particles are all going to grow and all are going to get smaller at one point, and they're just following the timeline over here. Now this is not exactly what we have in mind. The thing that we want to achieve is that over time, over their lifespan, that those particles are going to grow bigger and then grow smaller again. So therefore we're going to use channel frame expression. And channel frame allows you to set which part of the curve, which part in the timing you want to use. So over here I'm going to control this with the live attribute. Now the live attribute is something which is given together with the particle, so if you press middle mouse button you see over here velocity, acceleration, live, particle state, ID, etc. So the live is an attribute which goes from 0 to 1. So when the particle is born it's 0, when it dies it is 1. Now in order to match up completely with Bezier we just have to multiply it with 100. And so right now what we're going to see is that all the particles are going to grow in the beginning, and when they go bigger they become smaller again. So this is the effect that we want to achieve. Now also for the rotation we want to have something, and that's the following. We want to have the particles to rotate into two directions. We want them to rotate both into the clockwise direction as into the counterclockwise direction. Now for that let's activate over here the rotate, and again the same thing. If we start using the timeline directly, what we're going to get is that all the particles at the same time are going to follow exactly the same type of rotation. Now this is not what we want to achieve. The thing that we want to have is that each one of those particles is getting its own rotation value and speed. Now for that we're going to use a random expression. So type in random, and since we want to use each particle individually, we're going to connect this random with the ID of the particle. So each identity number of the particle. Now the random number, you know, it goes from 0 to 1, so we need to fit it, we need to get it into a proper range. So best one to use is fit, since we can have all kinds of operations in one go with the fit function. So we have the old min and the old max, and then the new min and the new max that you have to fill in. So the minimum value of the default random is 0 and the maximum value is 1, and we want to change this to, let's say, a minus 10 and a 10. Now this might still be too fast, because it means that if we're going to multiply it with $frame, that some particles can start rotating 10 degrees per frame. So let's see what this will result in. So with all kinds of directions. Now I think the velocity of some of those is just too high. So let's reduce these values. Reduce them to, let's say, a value of 3, something like that. And now we have something which is proper, something which is more usable. Alright, now another thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that these flames are going to fade away the higher they get. So let's do this by adding a color. And this is something we're going to use later on. So add color over here. And in the color we're going to add right in here an alpha ramp. So what I want to achieve is that in the beginning it is very visible and near the end it becomes fully transparent. So let's see what this will result in. So with these particles, and the higher they get, we still have this popping. I think we need to have also a color over here in order for us to see it. Like this. Let's see. No, they're still fading away. Okay, that's due to this fact. The lookup is still completely over here with the total range of frames, so at the end we see everything going transparent. Now this is not what we want to have. Again, we want to link this to the life of the particles. So go over here, and as we see now, we see all these particles just fading away, which is the effect that we want to achieve. Perhaps also in the beginning we want them to appear fading in, something like that. Okay, so this concludes the very first part. Now in the next part we're going to continue with creating the proper shader for this, and then we're going to make a duplication of the whole particle system with a few different settings, making sure that those particles are moving up faster and using different textures.